Welcome, believers. Welcome, conspiracy theorists. Welcome to the wonderfully weird world of the Tinfoil Hat Fan Club, where we talk about all the batshit crazy stuff that goes on in the world, and there's loads. So, last week we covered the Penrick UFO case. Prime witness, a woman called Kaz Clark. Do check her out. It's well worth checking her website out because she can tell a lot more than me. All right. Now, the week before that, we talked about the Wowth UFO crash, the Berwyn Mountain incident. Check that out. It's got everything. It's got crashed UFOs, government cover-ups, and alleged alien bodies. Check it out. And at the same time, like and subscribe. That would be fantastic. Check out my YouTube channel if you can. So, staying in the Welsh area, I would like to chat about the Broadhaven incident. Now, a flying saucer landed in a school in Broadhaven in 1977, apparently. Okay. Now, the 70s, believe it or not, had a lot of UFO incidents in the UK. We had the Berwyn incident, happened in 1974. We had the Wind Whistle alien abduction. Now, that happened on the A30 in 1977, the same year as the Broadhaven story. And if you haven't seen my video on it, check it out on my YouTube channel, all right? It is a really cool story. Also, we had a strange mutilation story in 1977 on Dartmoor involving 15 mutilated ponies. And that involved like government shady agencies and stuff like that. I have done a video on cattle mutilation, so if you can, check it out, all right? We also, believe it or not, we had a multiple police sighting on the 28th of August 1977 in the Lake District. Now, they reported seeing a diamond or kite-like massive UFO. And I haven't done a video on that yet, so we will cover it. So, 1977 was a busy old year, right? So, we then go on to the Broadhaven incident that first broke out on a children's programme called Newsround with John Craven, right? And I'll stick it up there, right? John Craven's Newsround. It was really big in the 70s. But of course, obviously, because the story was massive, it didn't stay there. Soon, the national and international news took an interest on it, right? But let's face it, it's not the only school-related story. You had the massive one in Australia, what they call the Westall 1966 incident, where nearly 300 children and teachers would see a UFO land near the school. There's obviously more. There's a Zimbabwean one, and there's one in America, but we will cover those later, right? So let's go back to the Broadhaven incident. In total, on the 14th of February 1977, 14 children would report spotting a UFO land in the Broadhaven field opposite the school. Right? Can you imagine if you're a school kid and you see that, right? 6 of them would claim seeing a humanoid figure wearing a silver suit emerge from the craft. Now, keep that silver suit in mind, all right, because that does crop up again. Now, all the children would describe a cigar-shaped UFO that landed shortly after lunchtime. So let's just say just before the end of their dinner break, right? Some witnesses reported an orange-green light that sat on a dome on top of the craft. Now, apparently, this UFO sat there for hours. What does puzzle me a little bit, normally you would have an army presence there by now. You would see helicopters, planes, trucks, especially helicopters, unless this UFO wasn't tracked by any authorities and simply slipped under the radar. Now, apparently, this ship was still there at 3:30 p.m. and it eventually rose from the ground and hovered overhead for a couple of minutes. Now, according to reports, it was roughly the size of a double-decker bus. And it's not only children that spotted this UFO. A teacher who would remain anonymous, you have to remain anonymous, otherwise you will get a knock from the authorities and you probably will lose your job, right? But she says she saw something strange that day. She reported seeing a shiny oval shaped object with a slight dome in the field where the children said they saw their UFO. She also heard a distinct humming sound as the object rose above the trees. So, further reports would also come in from parents who claimed their children had witnessed something strange. So, according to David Al Richard, for example, now David Al Richard went round and chatted to these parents, all right, and that's where he got the sniff that something was going wrong. So, David Al Richards is an author who wrote UFO Whales. Now, I can't find that on Amazon, but I did find it on Google Books if you're interested. So, just before 5 p.m. on the day of the sighting, a UFO investigator called Randall Jones Pugh would take a report from a lady claiming that her son and several of his friends have witnessed a UFO on the ground near the school. Okay, now, ironically, earlier in the year, in an interview for a local paper discussing sightings in 1976, he predicted that there soon would be a spat of similar events in West Wales. But I bet you not even he was prepared for what happened next, a UFO landing right next to a school. So, Mr. Jones Pugh's own words in a videotape that I watched, he said if the public knew the truth behind UFOs, they would run for their lives. And he is quite a well-respected UFO researcher. Sadly, he has passed away now, but there is videos of him on YouTube if you want to check him out, okay? Now, the boy in question, a little lad called Davis, was interviewed by Pugh and took him to the very place the sighting took place, where, obviously, the UFO had landed. Now, Pugh said, however, he believed the boy's account, noting how frightened he had been in the hours following the incident. Furthermore, several of his schoolmates also corroborated his version of events. Now, one of them, a David George, even claimed that he had seen an occupant of the craft dressed in a silver suit, seemingly looking down at a field as if he was studying it. This is perhaps an interesting detail because there were many sightings of an apparent extraterrestrial in a silver suit the previous year in England and Wales. So, might the visitor who visited Broadhaven School in February of 77 be the same one that was witnessed by many in 76? I'm going to say yes. It's too much of a coincidence, isn't it? And then I will tell you one little story of an incident in 76, all right? In the summer of 76, in the Reddish Valley area of Cheshire, 3 young children would encounter a mysterious humanoid figure in a strange silver suit. And once more, this figure would simply vanish into thin air, not once, but twice, right in front of the astonished children. Now, the incident would eventually find itself on the MUFON records, although it remains unexplained. And of course it would. How can you explain that, eh? Right, so the next day, back to Broadhaven 77, the next day an inspection of the landing site was carried out. Now, initial inspections didn't really produce much as the rain had washed away any markings on the ground, right? But interestingly, there was substantial damage done to a telegraph pole. Now, this telegraph pole was bent at an angle and stood where the children claimed they saw the object hovering. So I've looked into telegraph poles, right? Now, it would take a lot to bend or misshape a telegraph pole. Now, they're roughly 30 foot tall, they're roughly sunk into the ground at least 6 feet, and they've got a diameter of around 10 inches. So whatever bent that telegraph pole must have been heavy and must have been travelling at some speed. All right. So the Broadhaven incident, we've got 14 children. They saw a cigar-shaped UFO land in a field. Now, really, there's not much more to go on this particular story. All right, but given the amount of news coverage the incident received, including, obviously, national newspaper and television news programmes, the head teacher of the school, a Ralph Luen, issued a public statement on the incident. Now, he would state that he had spoken to each of the children individually and ultimately did not disbelieve they saw something that they had never seen before, adding that it was not his belief that children of such a young age are capable of sustained, sophisticated hoaxes, because these kids are only 7 to 11. All right, so following this statement, Llewellyn refused any further interviews with the media, and I simply don't blame him. His single statement, though, spoke volumes. He said, basically, what the children had witnessed was real, and it was certainly real to them. Okay, so that's the Broadhaven incident. Not a lot on it, but 14 children at least, and at least one teacher did see a UFO land on the Broadhaven field. All right, so in the weeks and months following the incident, reports of other sightings surfaced. Soon, investigators and media alike would refer to the area as the Broadhaven Triangle. All right, so UFOs were being spotted all over the place. And I will give you an example, right? The Coombs family. So, he was a farmer. Take the Coombs family, for instance. At their farm called Ripperstone, they would have several UFO encounters as well as seeing strange bright orbs. Now, Ripperstone Farm is situated in a rather isolated area of South Wales, and there were, or should we say are, a number of high security, perhaps even top secret military bases close by. Now, whether these military bases have something to do with their encounters is something to ponder on, isn't it? I don't think we can entirely, scrub them out. So, the Coombs family noticed that their electricity bill was forever increasing in price, right? And they wasn't using anything extra. Their TV would regularly burn out, apparently, as would batteries in their family car. Now, a battery draining is a good sign there's a UFO afoot, if you ask me, all right, because it's a really common occurrence. You see a UFO, their car's cut out, no power, no lights, won't start, and when the UFO disappears, they start up again. All right, what would suggest these UFOs have some sort of an electrical ability to, like, shut our stuff off, right? So, in April 1977, however, 2 months after the school incident, right, the worst of all the incidents happened with the Coombs family. While watching a movie at home in the late hours, a tall figure in a spacesuit appeared at their window, right, and they said his face seemed to be blank, as if it wasn't there. Now, remember that, all right, okay, because that's important, right? So let's just rehash that, right? A tall figure in a spacesuit appeared at the window. Was it a silver spacesuit? Was it the same man who appeared in the Broadhaven field with the kids? It sounds that way, doesn't it, right? Now, maybe the kids were too far away to notice their face, right? But as this bloke, or this entity, or this alien, whatever you want to call it, appeared through their window, he didn't have a face. Now, the police officer who attended the Coombs home later stated that they were the most frightened family he had ever been to see. And let's face it, if you were in the living room at 12 o'clock at night in a farm, isolated somewhere, and you saw a silver-suited man looking through your window, you would be frightened too, wouldn't you, right? So perhaps even stranger were the bizarre goings-on with the family cattle. Now, this gets a bit weird, right? One evening, Mr. Coombs discovered that his herd of cattle, and there was over 150 cows, had somehow been transferred from their usual field to one around a mile away. And try as he might, he could not figure out who had done so or how they had achieved it. Because if you think about it, 150 cows. What would you need? At least a couple of Land Rovers, at least a couple of trailers. And when these cows are moving in and out and going through the gates, they would make a noise. They would hit the barriers. So how did they move 150 cattle from one field to the next? And it gets weirder, right? Once more, this move had to have been carried out completely in a matter of minutes. So Coombs had gone to check on the herd at around 10 p.m. and to provide their nightly feed. He reckons he remained there until just after midnight, when he decided to make the short 1-minute drive to the main house in order to make a cup of tea. Right. However, almost immediately after arriving, his telephone rang. Right. So he obviously picked it up, and upon answering, he was confronted with the concerned voice of the neighbour asking why Coombs's herd of cattle were in his field. Well, he's a little bit freaked out, right? So he makes the journey to his neighbour's field and was amazed to find his herd there. just as the neighbour had stated. I mean, how did they get 1 mile away within a minute? And that wasn't the only cattle related incident either. On the 15th of April, at just before 6 a.m, Coombs and his son made sure that their 16 heifers were locked up good and safe before going to feed the rest of the herd. Now, after preparing the milking units for milking, Mr. Coombs returned to the heifers to find that they were missing. The pen was empty, and they would later be discovered in a field around half a mile away. Now, at the same time, a Mrs. Coombs noticed a silver disc-shaped object hovering in the sky a short distance from the family farm, approximately 3 feet from the ground. Now, it would remain there for several minutes before suddenly shooting off into the distance. Now, whether this is interesting or not, but it went in the direction of the sea. Now, if you watch the Berwyn Mountain video I did, there is a strong suggestion that there is an alien base off the shore in Wales. Did it go there? Did it go there? Now, they would examine the area when the object had been spotted a short time later and would find that there is a circular burn mark was evident on the ground. And even more interesting, none of the cattle would go to that particular area of the field following the incident. So we all know that animals have like a better sense of what's going on than us. Now, did that UFO have what? A magnetic, electrical, did it leave a residue? Why was the cows not going there? Did they sense something that, obviously did. They obviously sensed something was there. Was it an EMP field or something? Well, we don't know, do we? Right? But that isn't the only incident, right? So, around the same time, the owner of Haven Fort Hotel, a Rosa Granville, reported a further bizarre occurrence, right? So she was awakened from her sleep at around 2:30 by a bright light from outside. She peered out of the window and she could hardly believe her eyes. A strange object, like an upside-down saucer, had landed in a field opposite the hotel. Furthermore, she could see a pair of faceless humanoid figures next to the craft. Faceless humanoid figures, exactly the same as the entity that peered through Coombs's window at midnight 8. Exactly the same. Obviously, they have to be connected. All the while, Granville was aware of an intense heat that come from the object and literally infiltrated the windows. So she could feel the heat from where she was watching. So, the following days, Rosa returned to the field where she had seen the strange and unnerving craft in an attempt to find evidence of its presence. And you would, wouldn't you, really? Just to make sure you wasn't imagining things. And much to her surprise, she discovered that the grass had been significantly compressed, with some of it showing signs of being scorched. What's no surprise considering that she could feel the heat from the window. Now, Rosa also noted how close the Royal Observer Corps was to the location and began to ponder if there had been some kind of military involvement or at least knowledge regarding the incident. So obviously there was a military base close by. I don't think they got anything to do with it personally. But let's go back to Granville. So, incidentally, right, Granville had experienced another UFO sighting only days earlier with her husband while in a car park of a hotel with several other guests when they all witnessed several bright yellow lights moving across the sky above. And Granville's husband would describe the lights as watching a train in the sky. Now, they would eventually disappear in the distance and out of sight. Rosa also saw these strange lights again several days after the second sighting. This time they remained visible for around 45 minutes and they moved back and forth across the sky. 45 minutes. That is an intense sighting, that is. And if it wasn't for the fact that they were moving backwards and forwards like that across the sky, you would have said that was a planetary body, wouldn't you? 45 minutes is a long time. But so agitated from the incident, Granville proceeded to write to her MP and Nicholas Edwards, demanding an explanation. In turn, believe it or not, Edwards did make contact with the Military of Defence. Right, so you would imagine, right, now, if Granville was lying, would she write to her MP? Of course she wouldn't. So it turns out the MOD did conduct a very serious investigation, right? So just as I'm sure none of you are surprised, their findings were kept very much under wraps and only discovered when files become available to the public. There's no surprise there, right? So they did conduct a very serious investigation, but they kept it to themselves. They would, wouldn't they? And it turns out, right, that a member of the MOD did visit Granville's, right? They actually did turn up at her house to have an interview. And she claimed the military advised it was best not to say anything about the incident. And the reason they offered was not to alarm the general public. So a bloke turned up, gave an interview, and said to Granville, don't say anything because it might alarm the general public. Oh, against what? What are we being alarmed against, right? Now, behind the scenes, right, the MOD were conducting extensive but very discreet investigations. These investigations were for military eyes only. Even politicians were not privy to their finding. Now, what I suppose this perhaps suggests more than anything else is that the UFO witness were not military experiments. All right. So, okay, now obviously, some people have come forward making random confessions that they were behind the sightings claimed and they were all hoaxes. Now, you call me paranoid, but I wouldn't put it past the military to stage these hoaxes, to pay people to go and say, I did it, it was me. All right, so would you put it past them? But for their part, though, the school children who witnessed the Broadhaven school sighting have all stuck to their original story. They've all swore down that what they saw is what they saw. So, just when it was starting to die down a little bit and people were starting to, lose interest, another sighting appeared, right? Another incident occurred during the day of the 17th of February. That day, several sightings were reported of an almost identical object being spotted above the school. The first report by one of the teachers was during the morning at around 10:30 a.m. Now, although the teacher wishes to remain anonymous, of course you would, wouldn't you? She would agree to sign a statement regarding information she later provided to the authors of the Dyford Enigma. And one of those authors is said Randall Jones Pugh, the bloke who interviewed David Davis and David George. Right? She would state that the object she saw was oval shaped with a slight dome and appeared to have an exterior of shining metal which appeared to contain ridges. Now, just before the object disappeared behind the nearby trees, she also noted a humming noise, which she presumed come from the craft. Now, of course, a humming noise. Now, that was witnessed by the anonymous teacher in the Broadhaven incident, wasn't it? She said she saw it fly overhead and it gave a humming noise. And obviously, this craft looks the same, so we would have to assume that it is the same vehicle. Also, two dinner ladies claimed to have seen a UFO landing on the school grounds. Not only did they see the object, but one dinner lady claimed to have seen a figure enter the craft before it went speeding off. Interesting, isn't it? So, what do you think then? The Broadhaven incident, the Broadhaven triangle. That's not the only thing. A little lad, right, a 13-year-old lad, a lad called Steve Taylor, would experience another sighting of a strange dish-shaped craft when he said it was glowing orange. He would begin to go through the gate into the field in order to take a closer look. However, no sooner he had done so when he saw a large domed object in a nearby field. Now, he reckons he saw a tall being dressed in a shiny one-piece suit. So, obviously terrified, he turned back to the house immediately, telling his family of the strange offence as soon as he barged through the door. So he's seen a weird-looking, should we say, entity? He's got frightened, he's ran back, he's barged through his house and he's told his parents, right? So that's another incident, right? Now, let's face it, with an incident like that, there are going to be several further explanations offered for the sightings as the years went by, as well as an apparent confession of a hoax, right? So let me tell you a few of them, and you can tell me if you believe them, right? This ranged from a local, he reckons he had constructed a silver spaceman suit and wandered around the area to scare people. I'm not buying that. And then one explanation was there was a member of the U.S. military. He claimed that he wore the silver person suit. It was a fireproof uniform, and the UFOs were actually jets. All right, that's the explanation from the military. But I've got to ask you, why would you wander around a field near a school in a fireproof uniform, and why would you be landing jets by a school? You wouldn't, would you? Now, some would even claim that the children had witnessed what was not a landed UFO, but a parked agricultural vehicle. And that's ridiculous, man. So, in response to the assertions that the children had mistakenly seen an agricultural vehicle rather than a cigar-shaped UFO, David Davis, the young lad who got interviewed by Pew, would state that many of the children who attended the school at the time of the sighting were from farming backgrounds, meaning that they would have been able to identify such equipment. What's more, many were also familiar with almost every RAF aircraft in the sky due to the regularity with which they saw them. So, obviously, those explanations aren't quite ringing true, are they? Right? So what do you think of the Broadhaven Triangle? Given that there was a lot of different sightings around the time, obviously from the abduction of Katie Walker on the A30 to the strange mutilations of the ponies on Dartmoor and the police sightings near the Lake District that I will cover next week, all that appears to be at the same time. So there does seem to be a lot going on. What do you think, mate? The Broadhaven Triangle? If you want to know more information, check it out. There's loads of stuff out there. There really is. There really is. The Broadhaven School, then, 14 kids saw a cigar-shaped UFO land in the field opposite. That's 100%. I'm 100% convinced that really happened, right? Dinner lady spotted something. Teachers spotted it. Obviously, they stayed anonymous. You had cattle movement. That's strange, isn't it? You know, that's going to Skinwalker Ranch territory, that is. Moving cattle around, that's weird, that is. So, anywho, Broadhaven Triangle. Drop me a line, tell me what you think. This was the Tinfoil Hat Fan Club. I really appreciate you sticking around. Please like, subscribe and ring that notification bell, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.